Weston, Connecticut is my hometown. I've lived here for nearly 13 years since I moved from my birthplace of New York City. As I drove through this town that I call my home, I couldn't help but wonder, how did this all begin? There seemed to be so much history, and I had so many questions. That is what inspired me to create this film. So, what is Weston? Let's start with the basics. According to the 2010 U.S. Census, Weston is a town of slightly over 10,000 people in Fairfield County, Connecticut. It has several communities such as the Northfield Historical District, Aspetuck, Lyons Plains, and Georgetown. Weston also has several notable parks and bodies of water, being Devil's Den Nature Preserve, the Saugatuck Reservoir, Aspetuck Valley Country Club, and Biseglia-Scribner Park. Weston wasn't always a small town where New York businessmen and women set up families away from all the hustle and bustle of the city. As stated on the town sign, in 1639, Weston was the Northfield parish of Old Fairfield and contained the two regions known today as Weston and Easton. It was divided into long lots in 1670 and remained a part of Fairfield until 1787. The changes didn't stop after that, however. Soon enough, there was discontent in the town, and a split was proposed. In the 1800s, Weston was comprised of two parishes, the Northfield Parish and the North Fairfield Parish. The Northfielders were angry. The vast majority of town offices were held by the slightly richer and more populous North Fairfielders. The town's General Assembly was positioned to split the two towns in 1818, 1824, 1840, and 1844, all to no avail. Finally, the town legislature agreed to the partition on April 29, 1845, and the next month, the town was partitioned. A short song had been written on the occasion. Old Weston is no longer one, the town has been divided. The people asked, the deed was done, the law has so decided. Easton would not leave so willingly, however. They challenged Weston's right to its name and to control of the old Weston records. Nothing came of these claims, and two towns were born that year. Easton had the majority of the town's agriculture, but Weston was beginning to rely more heavily on industry and new people entering the community. Unfortunately, this did not last, as the 20th century came and Weston regressed to its agricultural roots. This may have had to do with the flooding of Valley Forge, the industrial center of Weston that now sits under the Saugatuck Reservoir. In the mid to late 1800s, Valley Forge was a quaint industrial village nestled in the Saugatuck Valley between Weston and Easton. There was a factory that produced tools, a sawmill, and a few small farms, as well as land that was regularly used as hunting ground by the locals. This all changed in the 1930s when the Bridgeport Hydraulics Company, now known as Aquarion, came looking for a spot to create a reservoir. Land prices had plummeted, and the Bridgeport Hydraulics Company had seen that there was an opportunity to purchase valuable land at a cheap price. This sort of land acquisition was not the first of its kind. It had been done before in Tennessee. In order to make way for a reservoir, the Tennessee Valley Authority had relocated a population of poor white farmers living off poor land to much better communities, all while paying them a handsome sum for their near valueless land and moving their cemeteries, churches, and personal belongings. The BHC attempted to replicate this event, but failed miserably. Valley Forge was renowned for its beauty, and there was a very strong sense of community. The land was worth far more than what the BHC offered. However, this was the era of the Great Depression, and nobody other than the BHC was going to buy the land. And as beautiful as it was, the land was not fertile enough to warrant turning down the deal. There was a fight to stop the construction of the dam that lasted nearly a year, but in the end, the Bridgeport Hydraulics Company, whose former president, P.T. Barnum, is known to have coined the expression, "there's a sucker born every minute," won the battle. Construction on the dam began in 1938. The buildings were burnt to the ground, the dead were dug up and reburied, and the town was flooded. By 1941, the Saugatuck Reservoir had engulfed the town. Today, little remains of the town, but it's rumored that if you were to go to the floor of the reservoir, you could see the charred remains of the homes that once stood there, and sometimes, at low tide, you can get a glimpse of the road that once led down into the town. Valley Forge may be gone, but Weston still honors it. There are 2 streets named after the town. Valley Forge Road, which runs alongside the water, and Valley Forge Lane, which is located off of Lord's Highway East, not too far from the former town. Georgetown is a place that is known to many, whether you've eaten a meal at Washington Prime, or Rancho Alegre, or just passed through on your way to Caroluzzi's or the movies. Chances are you've been to Georgetown. However, the identity of Georgetown is somewhat misleading. Georgetown is in fact not a town. Originally known as Osborne Town, Georgetown has never had enough people to be its own town. Instead, the U.S. Census Bureau designates it a village, and its territory technically falls in Weston, Wilton, and Reading. Due to its partition status, Georgetown at one point in the late 19th and early 20th century had its own special school district that accepted students from all 3 towns. However, this changed in 1933 when Weston opened its own school district, pulling Weston and the Weston-controlled area of Georgetown's students into the new Hurlbut School. In short, Georgetown Village, while not a cohesive town, has its own identity and status within Fairfield County. So the Georgetown Day slogan, putting the town back in Georgetown, doesn't exactly make sense, as you can't put something back if it was never there. In 1966, the Aspetuck Land Trust began to acquire land to use for open public space. A year later, Catherine Ordway donated 1,400 acres in honor of her father, naming it the Lucius Pond Ordway Preserve. However, it would colloquially and later officially be known as Devil's Den. Devil's Den covers a large amount of northern Weston and branches slightly into Reading. The 1,400 acres seemed like they would be a permanent fixture of the Aspetuck Land Trust, but in the 80s, an individual managed to obtain 16 acres of land within the very heart of the preserve. The same Bridgeport Hydraulic Company that had flooded Valley Forge owned 86 acres. The town of Weston owned 62 acres, and the People's Bank owned 60 acres. The town and the Conservancy were both in an uproar. Weston decided to sell their land to the Conservancy and for the next decade joined forces with them to purchase back all the remaining land. By 1994, Devil's Den was whole once more, and no further development would occur on the land. Today, Devil's Den is open to the public, with all of its unspoiled natural beauty, all thanks to the dedicated elected officials of Weston and the efforts of the Nature Conservancy. The Northfield Historical District is the heart of Weston, and so it only seems right that we end here. Northfield is easily the most modern area of Weston. It contains Weston Town Center, which is the only commercial area in the entire town. There's the church, the historical society, the town offices, the police and fire stations, the library, and the schools. This is Weston. Dirty bird sandwiches outside of Peter's after a long day of school. This is what I've grown up with, and now I know how it all started. I set out with a question: what is Weston? And I can finally answer it. Weston is a town of slightly more than 10,000 people in Fairfield County, Connecticut. It has several communities such as the Northfield Historical District, Aspetuck, Lyons Plains, and Georgetown. Weston also has several notable parks and bodies of water, being Devil's Den Nature Preserve, the Saugatuck Reservoir, Aspetuck Valley Country Club, and Vesegli Scribner Park. But Weston is so much more than that. It's a place with a deep sense of community, a history of tragedy and triumph, a history of hard work and great rewards. Weston is not just a place on a map. Weston is a home to me, and a home to many of you. This is Sam Theriault, signing off.